And part of the reason they kind of solved some of their problems of isolation and poor management and political class that had grown quite stale and ineffective was by being very active in their trade with the European Union, what became the European Union. So the more that they engaged in trade with the EU, the more robust the United Kingdom economy became. And they were also able to keep the British pound, which was quite a neat trick, which gave them another cute little way to maneuver some GDP growth. But since leaving the EU now, they don't have that buffer anymore. So they're on their own, and the inflation is raging, and there's very little the central bank can do, the Bank of England. And like I said 5 years ago, I would not be surprised, and I will not be surprised when it happens, that the United Kingdom will once again need a bailout. As far as the bond market goes, you have a problem of convexity where there's just too much debt out there, and the maturity on that debt is extended out toward further reaches of the yield curve, which means that the central bank is less able to manage the financial problems of the United Kingdom and other countries as well. So I think it'll be a lot worse this time than in 1976. Oh, absolutely. The White House and the Feds are entrapping these representatives with these fraudulent loans as a way to coerce them and to censor them. So they're no longer ability to represent the constituents who voted for them have been neutered. So there is no representative democracy in the United States. You have the feds that are corrupt and trading on inside information, as we now know, with like Nancy Pelosi and others, who are out there essentially entrapping congressmen and senators with these fake and fraudulent PPP loans, and then using that to silence them when they attempt to stop and voice opposition to programs from the federal government that are enriching the kleptocracy in America. Let's be clear. America has become a kleptocracy. It's become an oligarchy. So you have oligarchs in the United States, like, for example, when the fall of the Soviet Union happened, there was a rise of oligarchs. Here in America, with the life expectancy down, infant mortality up, paper money printing going berserk, you have a rise of an oligarchy in America, and it's becoming pernicious, ugly, and causing incredible dislocation and anxiety. It's a bribe. In other words, they can't print money without congressional oversight. So they lend the money as a loan, which is you don't have to pay it back, not a forgivable loan. So that essentially it is, though, you do the accounting and you do the math, this is bribe. Dollar is the printing press, just like any of the shitcoins can print billions of tokens, and they give them to the influencers who go on the TV to push their propaganda. And if they balk, they say, oh, you took that money, and now we're going to expose you. And they manipulate the situation accordingly. So the part of the branch, the judiciary, is failed. It's gone. It's fallen. The executive branch has also now fallen because the top executive, the president, is clearly without mental capacities to do that job. So you have the judiciary and the executive are now dead. Over there at the Supreme Court, they recently had a leak where one Supreme Court justice was leaking on another Supreme Court justice. So I would posit that also indicates that that third branch of government is now also dead. So what's left? The fourth branch, as Thomas Jefferson called it, of the press, the free press, that's also been deadened. They're unable to speak freely. Free speech is dead. So where's the life in this republic, Ben Franklin, that you warned us about? Where's the life? Where's the heartbeat? What's actually working? All three branches of government have failed, and the journalistic branches of the press is also dead. What's alive? What's working? Absolutely jack shit's working. That's the answer. Numbers that all fiat currencies are in fact collectively tumbling. The death of the dollar has been predicted for decades, but are we finally in the last days of fiat?
Well, yeah, we're certainly near the end of the fiat game. It's hard to know exactly if it's a few months away or a few years away. That's how these things go, as you know. They're volatile, but yeah, there's a short squeeze on the dollar. It's kind of hilarious, in my opinion. But I guess, given the policies they're pursuing, you would think that might happen right before it dies.
So, Lawrence, on February 26th, we froze 600 billion in Russian reserves. Is this kind of the end game? I mean, does China look at this and say, oh boy, our money can be stolen at any time by the US? Where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, well, it's another brick in the wall, right? I mean, this is an incremental process, as I said earlier, of losing confidence in fiat. And if your fiat can be seized by an aggressive government that's trying to play by their own set of rules, you're going to stop using it. And this is why we see China and Russia and Turkey and a number of other countries, doing deals directly in their own currency, and the percentage of world transactions denominated in the dollar is falling rapidly. And as the world's reserve currency, that's a bad thing for the dollar and really for all paper currencies eventually, because fiat is fiat, and it's not just the dollar. The dollar just happens to be the most notable and largest one. So yeah, that's a brick in the wall. I'm sure when that occurred, China, Russia, well, obviously Russia, but China, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, India, all these other countries took note. I mean, I've seen India is doing transactions with Russia denominated in Chinese yuan. I mean, what's that all about, right? So, so yes, we are watching fiat currency die as we speak.
Deglobalization seems to be intensifying, and de-dollarization as well. Where do we go from here?
Well, this is, I'm sure you guys have read it. I bet a lot of your listeners have too. If not, they can Google it and find it. Zoltan Posner really made a great recent paper where he talked about how, these wars have basically broken the globalization system. And now, trust has been lost. And so when trust is lost, people don't want to trade with one another, and supply chains become iffy, and getting, inventory is almost liquidity. And so people have to overbuy in order to make sure they have enough. And that's part of what we see going on right now. That's part of the larger problem associated with fiat currency failing. So yeah, the wars. I mean, as Posner points out, I mean, we were shipping China cheap dollars, and they were shipping us manufactured goods, and Russia was shipping the world cheap commodities, and we were shipping them paper. And both, well, started by Russia, but it's being followed somewhat by China. Both are saying we don't want this paper anymore. These paper dollars aren't any good. So give us an alternative. And that's what's occurring. It's very clear to me, Max. I'm sure it is to you as well, that we are in the end game of fiat, and fiat will die. We just don't know exactly when. We have to be patient.
So, Lawrence, hundreds of billions of dollars of student debts were just written off. Well, of course, it was just transferred to the taxpayer. I mean, this is essentially moral hazard gone berserk, right? Because why would anyone assume that they would ever have to pay their debts off ever again?
That's right. I mean, it's look. This started in 2008, right? When we created socialism for the rich by bailing out the banks. That was free money for the wrong people. And then we followed it through with the PPP programs and COVID. And I know a lot of businesses that got huge PPP loans. They didn't need them. They were forgiven. So that was socialism for businesses. And, it's not surprising to me, probably shouldn't be to anyone else either, that students are saying, hey, you're handing out free money. Where's mine? And it starts with the 10,000. It's probably going to grow to a much larger number. I mean, this is a trend, right? And, we see in England and the continent that the energy rates are blowing up, and all these people are being forced to pay much higher electrical rates, so they're going to go bankrupt. Well, that there are going to be subsidies to help address that. And so really the bottom line, as you guys have pointed out so many times on your brilliant show, is that, the printer's going burr and it can't stop. And that's why fiat is doomed.